Well, hello everybody, and thank you for joining today's short video brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Credit Management. I'm Becky Sharp, the Marketing and Events Manager, and we are joined today by Sean Feast, Editor of Credit Management Magazine, and Yvette Gray, who is the Country Director at Atradius Collections, who have just been doing a short little interview on how Atradius have adapted to the current situation. So welcome Sean and Yvette.
Hi Yvette, how's it going?
Thank you. Hi, good, thank you. How is you, Sean?
Good, splendid. Now, Yvette, in fairness, people might know Atradius as being one of the largest credit insurers in the world, but might not be quite so familiar with its collections arms, which you're obviously in charge of. So, could you just give us a little thumbnail sketch about the business and what it does?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, we set up the collection units really to support the insured customers, essentially, in the first instance, because obviously credit insurance does things like provide credit limits and pays claims. But when it came to taking recovery measures, our customers were quite isolated and had to take the action themselves. So in order to support them, in about 1995, we set up collection units in most of the locations where we have credit insurance offices to support our customers through the process. So where they were suffering losses, we were able to recover for them. Since then, we've sort of developed the business and we've grown in our experience in credit management, and we've now diversified. So we offer our services to non-insured customers also. So that's including sort of collect letter services, amicable collections, and also legal collections. Mm-hmm. But then we've also sort of diversified into more of the credit management chain, so offering services to financial institutes such as sort of invoice check-in, standby servicing, etc., and also like a first-party collections where we can take over the entire done-in process for our customers also. So we've come quite a long way. We've evolved, but that's given us quite a lot of experience along the way.
Good, yeah, sounds like it. Now, the world today is a very different place than it was even 8 weeks ago. What are the main challenges that maybe you're facing as a business, but perhaps more importantly, the challenges that your customers are facing? What are you learning? What are you hearing from them?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. Of course, as soon as the COVID hit, I mean, the first thing we did was obviously reach out to our customers much more closely. And to simplify it a little bit, we're seeing two different messages from our customers. So we're breaking it down into two. So there are those customers who have reduced their placements to us or stopped completely. And this is because maybe they're very concerned with reputation and taking a bit more of an ethical standpoint at the moment about sending their customers for collection. So they want to be a bit more supportive to their customers. It could be that they're also maybe prohibited by legislation or government from sending cases to us and actually collecting on those overdues themselves. I'm thinking generally about the utility sector here. We have customers in utilities, in telecoms, who are not able and who have to almost suspend their collection activities. So they're in a very difficult position. But those customers, even though that they're reducing, they're providing much more support to their customers, they are fully aware that these amounts will need to be paid at some point. Mm-hmm. So they are foreseeing that at some point when businesses and when industry gets back to normal, that they're foreseeing maybe some resource issues later down the line. And I've already started talking to us about what support we can provide them in the future when they are able to start done in again and maybe start placing cases again, that if there is maybe, this is where we're looking at maybe the first party collection so that we can take over portions of their customer base, because they do anticipate having resource issues. They'd like to focus their attention on their bigger, more strategic customers, and maybe how can we help them while still taking an ethical stance and collecting on a more flexible approach, but really support them with those resource issues.
Yeah.
Now, there's some the other types of customers that we're seeing and that we're speaking to are very much they're placing business as usual with us, and actually it may be placing a little bit earlier than they would. So these customers are very focused on cash flow now and focused on their resource issues now. I mean, we've done a look at our numbers, and we are seeing an increase in placements overall. But what we're seeing is actually slightly larger placements. So we're seeing a reduction in the number of cases that we're getting, but bigger value. So this is telling us that credit managers out there are a little bit more anxious, particularly over those bigger values that they would normally be a bit more relaxed about. They're conscious that they don't want to be left in the sort of the back of the queue when things get back to normal, and they want to make sure that their position is secure and that they can try and get payment as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. Now, in those situations, our role is very key, and we're finding that our communication now needs to be top notch. I mean, we are really carefully managing this relationship between customer and debtor. In a lot of instances, there will likely be an ongoing trading relationship to consider. So we have to be very mindful of that, and we have to communicate to our customers, because we're finding our customers are more anxious. They need to be kept informed more frequently. So our communication is absolutely key at the moment.
Mm-hmm. So clearly you've had to be flexible in
mm-hmm.
the way that you approach things, and it sounds like, as you say, that credit managers are being very flexible as well, and you talked about perhaps being in touch with you a little bit earlier, and putting placements your way a little bit earlier. What do you do though when you have a scenario where somebody simply can't pay, and how do you manage that?
So if we look at our collection strategies, it is very important. You mentioned the can't pay. It's really important for us to establish early on which are the can't pays and the won't pays. Almost the can't pays are the easier side, because actually there's very much willingness to pay, but they can't. So again, this is where we're talking about staying in touch and doing our research. So if companies are saying that, that they can't pay because they've had to close down, we can work with them. So we make sure that our collectors are fully informed of the government support that's out there at the moment, so that they can engage in a very humane conversation, that we try and understand their business, and we work with them. So we're very much appreciative with account payable departments out there who actually do come to the table and are actually like, I can't pay, want to work with you. So, I mean, we've seen about a 200% increase in the repayment plans from 10 weeks ago to what we would normally have, like almost a 200% increase in the repayment plans that we're agreeing. So, yes, the can't pays are very much, that's what we want to work with. And as I say, it's staying in touch. Just regular contact with them, finding out, and just again being human about it. This is a really, really unprecedented situation. Everybody's finding their feet, but actually we are seeing, which is enlightening and I think quite inspiring, we're seeing quite a lot of entrepreneurialism out there. Even businesses that can't trade or that couldn't trade in the early days are finding ways of still engaging with their customers and still supplying and still trading. And it's doing that research, I think. It's understanding who are doing what and what ability they have got to pay is what makes the difference.
Mm-hmm. And what about, I know it's always a little bit of a thorny subject, this one, but what about litigation? Has litigation still got a role to play?
Well, it's a difficult one, I would say. And whilst you can still litigate, yes, you certainly can. But of course, what we're hearing from some of our customers is that, they may not want to be seen to be going to litigation just yet. And of course, we know that the courts have slowed down. We know that, hearings have been adjourned, and there's particular, obviously, difficulty in enforcement now because of social distancing. So yes, it is absolutely possible, but we do try and exhaust our amicable collecting as much as we can before proceeding down that route. And, for example, using our leverage, if we're talking about the won't pays now, using our leverage as part of the credit insurance company, and as you mentioned, one of the largest credit insurance companies in the world, using that leverage because we can have conversations to say that, this will affect your credit rating, and actually it could interrupt your supply chain if you're not able to get cover from credit insurance companies. So, particularly in this time where people are reliant on cover. So that's an extra sort of trick in our tool bag that we use in order to leverage payment. But certainly, yeah, litigation, it could be an option, but maybe, there are avenues that we could use in advance of that.
Yeah, sure. So how do you compare the UK activity? You're an international business, you collect internationally. So it might be interesting to learn if you've got any little sort of insights as regards how the UK compares to perhaps other parts of Europe. Are there any trends that are developing? Are we doing anything differently? Are our businesses doing anything differently?
Well, I think if we look at some of the countries that have been particularly hit hard with lockdown, Italy and France, they're still collecting, and I have a regular call with my counterparts in the other locations, to see what we're doing and where. And because, of course, it does concern me how well my other countries are collecting, because we have UK customers who place debts in other locations. So I'm not only concerned about the UK performance, I do collect overseas debts for my UK customers as well. So it's really important to me how we're collecting. Collecting them, all of our collectors are able to work from home. So that's been the real benefit of our organisation. So no matter what country we've been in, worldwide, at some point, our collectors have been working from home in all of our locations, and we've been able to continue with the business pretty well. And we are actually, and I never fails to amaze me when I look at the numbers, we are collecting pretty well considering the conditions that we're under and that the people are trading. What I would say is that we have seen a significant increase in insolvencies in Germany. And although we see collected amounts are on the rise in Germany, but we are also seeing an increase in insolvencies. The other one that I would say probably has been hit fairly hard is also Spain. We do see collected amounts falling, and I would say probably the outlook is a little more bleak in Spain at present. But it's something that we continue to look at on a regular basis.
Yeah. And closely monitor. So
yeah.
I want to try and summarize what sort of help we can give to credit managers. So people listening to this, what would you be saying to them now about what they should be doing if they're sitting there, if they're struggling to collect, they are perhaps looking to outsource to a third party, or perhaps they already work with you anyway? Mm-hmm. What advice should we be giving them now?
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a good one. So again, going from I could just go on from what we do, sharing our experience and what is vital to us for us to organise our collection strategies efficiently is this research, and it's using data. And we cleanse our data, we cleanse our portfolio regularly so that we are able to focus our efforts on the customers and the cases that we need to, okay, the ones that need more focus. So that's what I would say, and we can help with that as well. I mean, there are lots of companies out there who will do data cleans. So that was the first thing, is to really understand your ledger, understand the risk that you have. And then there's certain things that, I've said, stay in touch, keep close, so keep in regular contact. And I would say at the moment, it's keep those conversations as humane as possible and as personable as possible, because I think people do appreciate that approach. Yeah. Then there's certain things like, maybe investigate those customers that need payment holidays. Perhaps if you can work payment holidays, so extension to payments. And if possible, then agree repayment plans, to try and get smaller payments in more regularly, if you possibly can. I guess then, if I'm thinking about, there's lots of practical steps. I think if there's one thing I would say, and would be my greatest bit of advice to credit managers out there, is that this scenario has really raised the profile of credit management in organizations. And it's time for credit managers to come to the table and actually start discussing with sales, with other parts of the business, about the need for good credit risk and good credit management. And what I would say, which is, again, I suppose it's a bit more internally focused, but keep your place at the table there. Now is the time really to have those discussions, get your FD on board, have some discussions about how you can use automation, what kind of tools out there are there to support credit managers, what kind of dialers can you use, what kind of ERP systems can you use, what kind of automation is available, because as I say, this situation has really raised the profile and the need for good credit management. And of course then, I've got to say it, being in the industry that I'm in, that if you are going to escalate to a third party, I would do it early. It's not something to be afraid of. A good collection agency will be able to tailor their approach for you. So, there's a misconception there that, collections is a last resort. Actually, no, it's an integral part of the credit management process. Because if you've got your done-in process, and at the end of your done-in process, you say you're going to escalate, then you need to escalate. But say a good collection agency will tailor their approach and will be mindful of an ongoing trading relationship should you want to have one.
Good. So communication and dialogue to customers, whether that's an external customer or an internal customer, seems pretty vital going forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good, great stuff. Yvette, it's always a great pleasure talking to you. You look after yourself out there, and I hope everyone listening has learned a little something today.
Thank you, Sean. It was nice to speak to you. Thanks, Becky.
Right. Thank you very much, both.